was born in the Philippine Islands, but that was not intended at all. My parents were working in China at the time, and during the summer hot weather they could take a break in the Philippine Islands to a place called Baguio, which is the top of a mountain, and was therefore nice and cool. And during one spell there, my mother, she says, caught malaria and was given quinine, the standard treatment, and this actually induced an early labour. So I arrived a month early in the Philippine Islands. So there was an accident of time and place.
Where would you have been born? Where did they intend for you to be born?
In China, I suppose, in the hospital.
So what would be your earliest memory?
My earliest, well, I have no memory of the Philippine Islands, but I do have memories, I think, of the internment camp, which we usually just called the camp. I remember my mother, on one occasion, being obviously very frightened, as perhaps I hadn't seen her frightened before, and it was because a Japanese guard had shouted at her during our twice daily roll call because I had a dirty shirt on, and she sent us off to get a clean shirt. And I clearly remember feeling my mother's fear, which I suppose up till then she'd kept pretty well hidden. So that must have been a very frightening time for both of them.
You say that you feel you have these memories.
Yes.
Do you wonder whether they are memories that were gathered by hearing the stories?
Yes, could be, but I think that's an emotional feeling that seems to me, as far as I know, was a genuine memory. Maybe not.
Can you tell us anything about the daily life in the camp? Was it very hard, or was it?
I think it must have been, although I didn't appreciate it, because perhaps children don't really, they just accept what's there.
And you didn't know any different, I suppose.
That's right, because I went in, we returned in 1941, when I was about 1, and things were not too bad at the beginning, I gather, and this is relying on what my mother's told me, and what she's written in her excellent memoirs. So we had enough, I think, to start with, but gradually conditions got worse, and towards the end of the war, when the Japanese were obviously losing the war, it became very hard. They became much rougher, I think, and there was less and less food, and my mother remembers the only rice they got was that was scraped out of the bottom of the barrels or whatever the containers were, and was usually contaminated with lots of rubbish, so that was hard. And I have got in our archives, which are now in SOAS, the School for Oriental and African Studies, a recipe book dating from this time on how to use the minimum amount of rice and oil and so on to make acceptable food. So
did you cook? Or not you yourself, but did your mother cook?
Yes, everybody cooked.
Themselves rather
themselves.
than... Mm-hmm.
It varied, but I think at one point anyway, people had enough space because the Japanese took over an American Bible college, I think it was, and put us all there. And as the war went on, some groups of people were repatriated. The Australians were repatriated, and the Americans, I think, were repatriated. So that just left the Europeans.
And were you there until the very end of the war?
We were, yes.
Until peace was declared?
Until Hiroshima.
Until Hiroshima.
And yes, you have to distinguish VJ Day, Victory in Japan,
mm-hmm.
from VE Day, which is what most people think of as the end of the war.
I think people in America perhaps see VJ Day as more important, since America was more involved in
They were much more. Yes, and I think the aeroplanes, I remember going over the camp, yes, and dropping bombs nearby. They were probably American. They came near the end of the war. That was when some terrible things happened. One of the most awful stories I've heard And again, I've only got my memory of what my mother said. If she were alive, she could confirm it. Was that at the very end, there was a strange sort of gap when we knew that the bomb had been dropped. Japan had surrendered, but we were still in the camp. I think the Japanese commander gave his sword to somebody in the camp because they did like ceremony. So they were defenceless in a way. They gave up all their, maybe they had to give up their weapons. I suppose the Americans must have been coming in at the stage, and they were marched out of the camp to go somewhere. Because they treated the Chinese so very badly, worse than they treated us. After they'd invaded China, of course, Japan started in the north and gradually fought their way down through China all the way to the south, and they treated the Chinese very badly. And as these Japanese marched out, apparently they were cut down by the crowd, one by one.
And so you, how long after that did you get to leave?
Oh, probably the next day or two, because the Americans arrived. I'm told I had my first taste of chewing gum then, from an American who came, and we went to, where did we go to? I can't remember, we went to some other sort of transit camp, where we were actually given food, and we were all very ill, because we weren't used to food.
Right. And did you then return to Britain by boat, or you flown?
We did. No,
Boat.
Boat, a very slow boat. Apparently that was a terrible journey. I have no memory of that. But my mother's written in her memoirs how they went to Hong Kong, and then that wasn't the time. We went to Hong Kong and then waited for a boat back to Britain, and it was so crowded because everybody was desperate to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yes, it was not at all pleasant. I was told I had to sleep in a drawer because there was nowhere else to sleep. Drawer of a chest of drawers. If you want to go back a bit, there's some more, not memories, but records from newspapers and my mother's diary again. At the beginning, before we were interned, on one occasion we went from Hong Kong. I should explain, my father was medical missionary in charge of the hospital in Canton.
Sorry, was he a Methodist?
He was
Methodist
minister and a surgeon, and he ran this hospital in Canton. And to get there, we sort of went between Hong Kong and Canton. Hong Kong being thought to be a safer place. And on one occasion, to go back to Canton, we took the river steamer, and my mother says that there were dead bodies floating down the river because of the Japanese war further upstream upriver, and their boat. On this may be another occasion, but certainly there's a record, the newspaper account of the boat my parents and I were in, striking a rock, starting to sink. Fortunately, the captain managed to ground it on the sandbank, so it wasn't a disaster, but everybody got off all right. That must have been pretty frightening too, for my parents. So that was, it was chaos, I think, at that stage. And then my father insisted on going back to the hospital. It seems to me a very foolish thing to have done, but anyway he did. And that's when we were captured, caught by the Japanese and interned. So that takes us to 1945 was Hiroshima, wasn't it?
I think you, I seem to remember you mentioning a storybook that your father wrote for you.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Which was based around a very normal English childhood that you did not have at that time, is that correct?
He wrote a lot of verses, yes, a lot of poems.
Do you still have that?
Yes, I do, yes. One is in the SOAS collection, but I've got another one upstairs, I think, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's remarkable. He was a good, very good draftsman. He's drawn pictures in this as well as being quite a good composer of verse, yes. And of course they had a lot of time in camp, nothing much to do. That's what they spent their time doing.
So they obviously had access to paper and pens.
They must have done, yes. They also produced a daily newspaper, which I've got some copies of, or weekly or something, which they tried to make jokes at other people's expense, but not the Japanese, I noticed.
So in 1945, you're right, yeah, that was Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then
Yes.
the end of the war, and you travelled back to Britain.
Came back to Britain. Not for very long, that was just for less than a year, in fact, because my father insisted on going out again to China, and we went out again in 1945. I've got down here, must have been later in 1945. And he set about rebuilding the hospital and building a new wing. In fact, he'd raised the money when he was in Britain. So I can still remember the bamboo poles, that scaffolding, and the Chinese labourers working at this new block. So they put that up, and my grandfather came out with some Methodist bigwig from England, or maybe America. Maybe an American, that's only a guess. Someone who's given a lot of money to it anyway. Nixon, it was called the Nixon Memorial Hospital. So he opened that, and I think they were pretty busy, but then again, same thing sort of happened again. Then it was the communists this time. The communists who had started their long march up in the northwest, wasn't it, of China. I don't know when that was, but anyway, although they were expected not to be able to survive for long, they gradually fought their way down China. In fact, they were very popular, I gather, because unlike Colonel, what was his name? Chiang Kai, I forgot his name now, the nationalist leader, unlike him, the communists never stole food. They always bought their food from the peasants, and they seemed genuinely interested in the population. So they were supported, and they gradually took over more and more of China till they came to Canton, and we had to leave. I think my mother and I left, and my father stayed behind. He would never talk about that occasion, but I think probably he was kept thought he was accused of being a spy, and he may have been spying, I don't know. And I think he was treated very badly. So they say.
So you say you and your mother left.
Yes.
What about Jan, and was Ali born by this point?
I have to work out, I don't remember they born him.
But Jan is older than you, isn't that right?
No.
Oh, Jan is younger than you?
No, she was born in, let's think, 45. Yes, that's right, you're quite right. They were both born out there in that period, weren't they? Yes, after the war was over, but before the communists came. That's right, and then that's right, my grandfather came out, grandmother, towards the end of that period, and we all went back together, that was right, leaving my father behind. He was then caught by the communists. And as I say, probably even worse time than with the Japanese. But I don't know, they say you would never talk about that.
So you went to school, where did you go? You went to school at 9. And where was that?
It was Kent College, Canterbury, as a boarder, junior school and then the senior school.
Did you board through senior school as well?
Yes.
So you boarded for the whole of your...
All
What years would those have been?
They were, 1949 until 1959.
So you boarded for 10 years,
Yes.
at which point you were 19.
Yes, I left school, went up to Cambridge, 3 years.
Was that were those private schools?
They were half and half. They were called grant aided, I think.
So did you get a state grant?
I got a state grant, and I think my mother, depending on income, parents' income, as my parents, fairly small income, I think they got quite a bit of help towards school fees, yes. But it was a paying school. You had to pay to go there. But there were...
So did you have to pass an exam in order to gain entrance?
Yes, it did, yes. I still remember going up for that exam from the junior school to the senior school. It's a memory that stuck with me.
By train, or how did you?
Oh, they were in walking distance of each other.
Oh, okay.
Up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously realised it was something important. Yes, and they were quite good years. I quite enjoyed school. Once I got way up to school, of course.
Better than a Japanese camp, anyway.
Indeed, yes.
So then you went to Cambridge. Queen's?
Yeah, Queen's College, Cambridge. From 59 to 1962.
A fact of which I am very jealous, by the way. From having read Stephen Fry's novels about Cambridge, makes me it's kind of envious.
He lays it on fairly thick.
I'm sure he does. And you had part shares in a punt, I know that
yeah,
for a fact.
That's right, 5 of us, 6 of us.
Oh, 5 or 6? I was telling
Yes.
Ali I got it all wrong. I thought it was just 2 of you.
No, it was people I'd known before related to Haynes boys, twins, which I knew well from school. Chris Sheard, whom I got to meet there, because he and I dissected the same body. We were dissecting partners, so it was great fun. And what makes 4 of us? There was another one. I've forgotten who the 5th one was. So we lashed out what seemed an awful lot of money to us on a punt, several £100, and we moored it, and then we could go whenever we liked.
Did you have any, this is getting into rather minutiae, but did you have any system to book the punt, or did you just, just so few of you that it was rare that
I
they would
think we just
conflict?
rang it, maybe, I suppose you couldn't ring each other up, could we? We didn't have phones, mobile phones. I don't know how we did it, I think perhaps we
Text each
arranged
other.
it. Yes. Yes, I remember going late in the evening, and after the May ball I took Chris Sheard. We went to a May ball. I punted him up to Grantchester Meadows, which is a wonderful trip. We did it at other times as well, of course, up the river. Yes, that was... Yes, Cambridge is wonderful, isn't it? Very privileged to have been able to do that. Anyway, in 1962, reality caught up, and went to London to get St Thomas's Medical School, which was quite a culture shock. But it was still enjoyable, working in the wards and putting medicine to practical use.
Were you working on emergency, or what sort of thing were you doing?
We rotated through various, I think we had a series of, I think the first year was probably theatrical, and then we went to various firms, different firms which were the different specialties, perhaps 3 months psychiatry, 3 months ENT, 6 months general surgery. We went out to different hospitals for things like general surgery and general medicine. Yes, that was a busy time, but quite interesting certainly. And the finals must have been in 1965, final exams. Yes, 1965.
Do you remember what month? Was it immediately after Richard was born, or
It was, yes, because he was...
would it have been June?
was thought rather poor form to have married and had a son before I qualified, because I wasn't earning any money. We were depending on Phil's income at that point for our flat, which was in Belsize Park, which then was not as posh as it is now, but it was a nice area to live, quite a lot of trees. So, sorry, what was the question?
Was this before, did you take your exams after Richard was born?
Yes, it is.
So it would have been
Yes.
hectic, difficult.
It wasn't too bad. They were very good. He was very young, of course. We used to put him out of the window. There was a veranda. You put him outside the window. Yes.
Because if Mum was working,
Well, she gave up once Richard was born.
as soon as Richard was born,
That's right, yes.
so did that make... So did you then begin to earn money almost immediately yourself?
Oh, no, when did she... I can't remember exactly. There was a gap. I did some... Yes. That's right, there would have been a short gap anyway, but yeah, I don't remember money problems because actually my parents helped.
Mhm.
Probably. So I took the finals, exams, and the first job was, no, I've written that down, the job's down here. That's right, first job was in Canterbury, wasn't it? That's right. And we lived in Ettricksbourne. That was very enjoyable. And then I went back to London to work for 6 months, and then we went to Taunton for a year, and then Bath, and then back to St Thomas's for 6 months, and then on to Leeds, these 3 hospitals in Leeds for 3 years, worked there. I was doing urology by this time.
Leeds or Chertsey?
Well, Chertsey, yes, I missed out Chertsey, haven't I? Yes.
Well, I thought we were only in Leeds. Were we in Leeds for 3 years?
Yes.
I thought we were only there for 1 year.
No, 3 different
3
hospitals,
years.
1 year each, yes.
Okay.
It was different from London, yes. It was all good experience. So all that took us up until 1978, when I got the job in Swansea. 77, beg your pardon.
77, because we came to see.
Yeah,
I remember we came to see it in 76 in that very hot summer.
Oh yes, that's right.
And
Yes.
I remember watching TV and seeing fires going on all over the country. And,
Well,
when we were staying and we went to Nicholaston.
yes, we always say that after you've been to Nicholaston, I wasn't allowed to
Well,
apply for any other jobs. That was the one.
Yeah.
So then yes, I think we were very lucky to get the job. It's been very happy.